what does success in your new post look like to you? Morning.
We've been very clear, and the Prime Minister is absolutely determined that we need to see through the promises that we made in relation to delivering on this economic and development partnership with Rwanda that, of course, has that very important migration component to it. Ultimately, what this is about ending that jeopardy that people take every day when they get into small boats, put their lives in the hands of evil criminal gangs. And we've seen the catastrophic consequences of that with lives lost previously. This is one part of our solution to responding to that challenge. And the PM said that we would do whatever is necessary to deliver on this. And that's precisely what we're doing.
All right. Noting that we've been successful in taking home secretaries to Rwanda and posses of journalists, but no migrants, how come costs have increased to £300 million, Minister?
We always said that the partnership both was focused on migration but also an economic development partnership, and we think it's right that we support that economic development piece. We obviously want to relocate people to Rwanda as part of the agreement, but also some of that money is spent on the setup costs and making sure that the capacity is there on the ground in Rwanda to be able to administer this scheme at the first possible opportunity. And also, of course, some of that is money that we have put towards responding some of the very direct challenges that the Supreme Court raised, all of which have been addressed as part of the treaty and which we are then dealing with also through this bill.
How many Rwandans are we taking in return?
So we have said consistently from the very outset that we would be willing to take a very small number of people from Rwanda. For example, if people had complex needs that couldn't be met in Rwanda that we could perhaps better meet here in the United Kingdom. But people should expect a very, very small number of people to come through that part of the agreement.
What is a very, very small number, Minister?
I'm not going to speculate and put a figure on that.
Why?
But people should have in mind that this is going to be a very small number of people that we would be willing to accept in that direction.
50?
I'm not going to speculate on a figure,
so
but what I'm saying is a very small...
But there's no cap then?
There isn't, but what I think is crucial in this is that, what we've said, we're acting in good faith. This is a partnership. If, for example, there is somebody in Rwanda that we can support more effectively, then we would be willing to consider that as part of this agreement because we're acting in good faith. And I think, the Rwandan government should be very strongly praised for wanting to be a part of the solution to ending these terrible criminal gang organised crossings of the Channel, wanting to save lives and wanting to be part of the answer. And I think that that's a very commendable endeavour of itself.
Let's look at the other side of the two-way traffic then. What are the number of people, when it's successful, that you hope to be moving to Rwanda per annum?
So again, there's not a precise figure on that, but this is why we are investing in capacity, working with the Rwandan government to make sure that we can operate this partnership in a way that is successful. I hope what it will do is to help put out of business the criminal gangs that organise these crossings by ending that link between getting in a small boat, crossing the channel and assuming that once you get here, you're going to be able to stay.
But you and your colleagues must have sat down and have a target figure for what you would hope for. I'm going to say, for the purpose of debate, 20 a month. What are you working to?
I am sure that the new Minister for Illegal Migration will be continuing the conversations with the Rwandan government and with the team on our side.
I find this extraordinary that there's not even an ambition that by the end of year one we will have 250 people there or we will have 500 people there. This has never been discussed by the Prime Minister or anybody else. We have no idea. Nobody actually has numbers for anything. Oh, no, you do. £300 million that it's cost, and we don't have numbers of how many people are going that way or how many are coming back. And you portray this as a success to the country, do you?
Well, let me set that £300 million figure, Nick, in context. So at the moment, we are spending £8 million a day on the asylum system. When you consider it against that backdrop, those costs will only go up. If this remains the status quo, I'm sure that those asylum costs will only go up. This is a key part of us responding to that challenge. I think that this will be value for money. I do think it's the right investment that we're making to make sure that the arrangements are robust, that we can get people to Rwanda. We want to do that as quickly as possible. That's the ambition, that's determination, and that's what we're going to do.
All right, I sense I'm not going to donate numbers. Let's look at other matters. The Prime Minister confirmed yesterday that next week's vote on this Rwanda legislation will not be a confidence vote in him. Why doesn't he have the confidence to have a confidence vote? What does that tell us?
Well, I think that there's actually a unity of purpose in the Conservative Party in Parliament
Have you
to
spoken with
deliver
Suella
on this issue.
Braverman lately with your unity of purpose?
Well, I recognise that colleagues have different views on specific aspects of the legislation, but there is an absolute determination amongst us that these crossings have to stop, that the status quo is not a tenable situation in terms of the channel crossings. The risk to life is unacceptable. The costs are exorbitant and must come down. And I think that what will happen is Conservative colleagues will rally around the fact that the PM is keeping to the promises that he made to the country. Voters, I think, expect us to deliver on this. And there is a unity of purpose to make sure that we see through the promises that we made.
All right. I mean, the unity of purpose, you'll be aware, the Prime Minister addressed the 1922 committee. Then a couple of hours later, the Immigration Minister quits. He's not prepared, it would seem, to have a confidence vote. And yet you're saying there's and you have senior Conservative figures questioning the direction of travel, and you're telling me it's a unified party.
I think that all of us on the Conservative benches want to see an end to these crossings. And I think it's worth adding, actually. I mean, I have huge respect for Robert Jenrick. He is a valued colleague and I consider him to be a friend. We perhaps disagree on elements of this, but I think you also have to look at the fact that Lord Sumption, for example, has come forward and says that he thinks that this piece of legislation will do the job that we intend it to. So there are differences of opinion out there as to that. But I believe that what this will do is assert Parliament's view that Rwanda is a safe country, close off those avenues where people have been getting on the merry-go-round of trying to frustrate their removal from the UK, and help us to make really meaningful progress that I think the public desperately wants to see.
And just lastly on this, as part of the Rwanda deal, we also learn that anyone who is taken to that country from here and then is convicted of a serious crime can be sent back to the UK. So a convicted criminal of a serious level of crime comes back to the UK. Just remind me, and this is a success, is it, this treaty?
So the Supreme Court obviously raised concerns about the issue of refoulement, and we needed to respond properly to that. We are now confident that through the treaty, refoulement is no longer an issue, which means that that barrier is no longer applicable to the partnership getting off the ground. But an individual convicted of a crime in Rwanda would serve that prison sentence in a Rwandan prison. And at that point, we would be willing to have a conversation about the future for that individual, were they to decide that they could no longer stay in Rwanda.
I'm reading that we take them
reach
back,
an agreement,
Minister.
Reach an agreement according to the circumstances of the particular case.
All right.
But that addresses directly the blocker around refoulement, which we had to deal with.